Hello. Good afternoon. Now I'm coming at you early. Last time we came at you at like 10 o'clock at night. Now I'm coming at you at 3:45 in the afternoon. Like I said, I cannot for the life of me get down a schedule, but I do it on a normal day, Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. So that is good. And in honor of what we're going to be talking about today, I am wearing my The Governor Is Not My King Brood t-shirt. You can pick these up in store in Lexington. You can also buy them online at shop.broodco.com. That's shop.broedco.com. You can also support us there. You can buy beans. You can also come by the shop. You can buy stuff there. But the governor is not my king as much as he may try to be. And we've got quite the experience for you guys today. So, a lot of big news, a lot of interesting developments going on. We, of course, have the Scott County Circuit, a judge there putting an injunction on the governor involving a couple of businesses. We're going to talk about that. Somehow, I have found myself in an information war with mainstream media and the governor, which, whoops, just happens sometimes. I didn't mean to. And then as well, we're going to be talking about the sky is falling. The sky is falling because kids' sports are now the biggest concern in the world. That child playing baseball is literally now killing people. It used to be serving coffee is killing people. Now it is those unvaccinated, dirty children playing baseball out there killing people. Of course, that is J&J is having some problems as well. But let's dig into it today. And let's go in, and we're going to kind of combine this information war and what's going on with Scott County kind of together. So what do I mean by this information war? For those of you who are unaware, yesterday during his live carnival show, the governor was asked about House Joint Resolution 77 and people saying that it was ending the mask mandate. For those of you who are unaware, we kind of started that because we were the first ones. We kind of posted about it, and I know you guys don't see the metrics, but that specific couple posts, reached over 100,000 individual people, as well as then a few other places started picking it up after they talked to me about it, and I was like, listen, this is what I'm reading, and they started running with it. And that caused a problem for the governor, and he had to address that. And then now also you've got mainstream media articles being put out saying, hey, don't listen to these crazy guys on Facebook telling you that the mask mandate was over for like a week until the judge injunctified it. And even then, is it over? I don't know. And this is complicated, right? It's a complicated info war because there's some nuance here. And so we'll kind of go over what the problem is. But the problem is that the governor only needs a reason to say the things he said. He needs an explanation. As long as he has a slight explanation, even if it's wrong, the mainstream media and the departments and everything else will listen to him. And I'll give you an example. So on the 30th, when House Joint Resolution 77 and SB 148 and the budget passed, and overcame veto, and it passed the General Assembly, the governor immediately put out and the next morning filed in court to have them injunctified. And he then put out this to the cabinet as far as, because SB 148 was talking about childcare and COVID and childcare and limitations on that. And so he sent this out on the 30th that said, the cabinet has been instructed, so he sent this out to the cabinet and to all the childcare providers. The cabinet has been instructed that child care emergency regulations are covered by the current court injunction, which states any executive orders related to COVID-19 shall remain in full force and effect. This means the changes made by SB 148 will not go into effect. This court case is being reviewed by the Franklin County Circuit Court, which is patently just kind of not true. If it was true that it was covered by the original injunction, then I'd ask the governor, why did he even file in court against it in the first place? What he should have done, like what he should have done the first time, if he believed that was still true, is he would have sent this out. He wouldn't have asked the judge to injunctify it. And then if somebody was acting according in his mind wrongly, and then they tried to enforce it, and then when they argued about SB 148, then that would have been when the courts handled whether or not that was constitutional. And why does he have to do this? Why does he have to play this information war? Well, the whole reason why he has to play this information war is because all he's looking for is a reason to tell people, the mainstream media and the others out there, that, hey, this is a reasonable explanation I have to explain I'm doing what I'm doing. And here's the reason why. When House Joint Resolution was not injunctified yet, it got injunctified Wednesday afternoon. But when it wasn't injunctified yet, somebody I know was calling around to health departments and sheriff departments, letting them know that it was in effect and they shouldn't be enforcing mandates. And he recorded one of those calls. And in one of those calls, he calls the sheriff department. And the sheriff department said, which the sheriff department is supposed to be its own check on the powers of the government. But the sheriff department said, their verbatim words is, we'll wait until the governor tells us it's okay or the mainstream media does. Well, what happens when the governor is telling mainstream media and is telling this cabinet, like what I just said with this order, where they say their verbatim words, right, is that the cabinet has been instructed that they are under effect. So it is obviously the governor's opinion it's under effect. His own actions tell me he doesn't actually think that. But yet we have even sheriff's offices waiting for the mainstream media and the governor to give them the all clear. Which is a problem. That's a big problem. Because that's supposed to be a check to make sure one man, that is how one man has all the power if people are enforcing or doing things regardless. And so I say once again, if it was really covered by that already, why did you file the next day in the morning? Why did the judge have to make a ruling that took several days? Remember, he filed in court on the 30th. It was heard that Monday. It took until Wednesday afternoon for the governor to make, or for the judge to make a decision. Why did it take so many days? If it was already covered, it would have been a minute. Nah, this is already covered on my old injunction. Here, let me just say this is already covered. Pass it on. It took 3 days because he, one, had to craft a decision that I believe the Supreme Court thought it maybe, the Kentucky State Supreme Court maybe had a chance of upholding because, of course, we all know they're partisan hackery. But as well because it wasn't covered quite clearly based on the actions of the court. Based upon the actions of the court, it quite clearly wasn't covered. And so we're arguing this, and meanwhile, we've got the mainstream media and the governor coming after us, telling us we're throwing out false information. And when in actual, in fact, what's going on is they're not doing anything honestly. They have a conclusion they want to reach that says the governor's in power, and now they're just trying to explain that to you to give you an excuse to believe them because they know the police, the health departments, everything else will keep enforcing it. And it goes back to what Chris Weiss, who's an attorney, he's our attorney, he fights many of these fights. He's a great guy. I encourage you to follow him and encourage you to follow his attorney page. He makes a lot of posts personally about it, Chris Weiss. And so he made a post the other day that said, what do you do when you have an executive branch that is enforcing things based upon a hope and a prayer that this legal theory the governor has is correct, and it isn't? But the governor's the one in telling people to enforce it, and he's the only one they're listening to. They're not bothering to think for themselves, as shown with the recording of the sheriff's department. That's a problem. But we had a big win today. A big win that says what we've been saying is absolutely 100% correct. The governor cannot be doing what he's doing. The Scott County ruling in the Goodwood case, which says that the governor and nobody else can enforce the governor's mandates upon Goodwood's restaurants and breweries because they're not a party to the case going on in Franklin County. What have I said all along? I have said this all along. If I don't see how I can be under the auspices of Judge Shepard, if A, I don't live in Franklin County, I'm in Fayette County, and B, I'm not a party in that case. The legislators and the AG is. Now you say, well, Andrew, judges rule all the time things are unconstitutional. How's this different? I'll tell you how it's different. When they make normal rulings about something being unconstitutional, and they're stopping a law, they stop the executive branch, the governor, his offices from enforcing it. They stop the law enforcers from enforcing it, or they instruct them to enforce it. But because this is done in backwards crazy towns world, where the governor is somehow injunctifying the AG and the legislators that don't do anything after a law's been passed, it leaves it open for things like what you're seeing in Scott County, things like you're seeing in our case up in Boone County, which we have filed for class action status. Chris did on that lawsuit there. What that means is if we get the same verdict, and if that class action status is granted, then the judge's injunction in our case would apply to the entire state, opening up the entire state to follow the laws passed by the legislators. And that's the case there in Boone County. So the only reason why this can happen is because the governor has done it in a backwards, crazy town's way, that this isn't how the law works. And we've been saying it all along, but of course, if he's instructing his people to do something that he knows is maybe sort of, kind of not, right? What are you going to see happen? Now I say, what are we to do? Because what I just said there, right? So let's assume that we don't get class action status, but we get our granted in Boone County. They get theirs granted in Scott County. Does that mean every single business is going to have to get to court to get injunctified from being enforced, or have to wait till the health department or somebody else comes in and takes away their license and takes them to court and then argue the same thing in court and win every time? Possibly. And that's what the governor's afraid of. The governor's afraid that you all will realize what the judge did in Scott County and what he's been doing isn't the way it's supposed to be done if you listen too much to us. He's also realizing that he's got a problem because, of course, if in the same way that he gives a reasoning to people to still listen to him, if people hear a reasoning to not listen to him, that makes sense because, it is the truth, and they stop listening to him, he now has a problem as well. He's got a big problem. And that's why you found him yesterday saying, you shouldn't get your media, your news from social media, from a person trying to politicize things. He's talking about us, and everything the government do is political. So, of course, any government action and weighing in on it is involving politics. So politicizing is such a silly term to begin with. Which, of course, we all know the governor's been politicizing this all over way. And by definition, he has to be. He's the government, and he's acting on something that's political. But then he follows up with this wonderful, wonderful, wonderful new saying he's got, or not wonderful new saying, I guess, this saying he had, where he said you should only be getting your news from TV, print, and radio. TV, print, and radio. Now, how many people out there, with everything I just said, and you literally have a mainstream media place right now saying, even though you have a Scott County judge ruling that they're not a party to the case involving the injunctifying of SB1, SB2, and HB1, and they are law, and you are injunctified, Goodwood, from being pushed against you, even though you've got a judge ruling that in Scott County, and that's essentially what he's saying. Like I said, I'm not an attorney. Talk to your attorneys before you do anything. But you got him even saying that, yet you still have mainstream media coming out and saying that when we tell you, last week we told you House Joint Resolution because it was from the time it passed on the 30th till this Wednesday ended the mask mandate, and it did in the plain letter of how it's read, and now you've got a Scott County judge agreeing, saying, hey, Judge Shepard can't be injunctifying thing for an entire state. You still have them running a media campaign against us. You still have people like WHAS running things that say, is a mask mandate over in Kentucky? No! Even though a judge just ruled that if you're not a party to the Franklin County case, it is over for you. At least for Goodwood Brewing, and I would assume everybody else could argue that same legal standing. So not only does it appear that we're in an information war with the governor and mainstream media, but also it appears that maybe we're right. It's kind of a shocker. It's kind of a shocker. I did not think I'd find myself this way. But you say, well, Andrew, here's the problem, though. What you're saying is all true and good, but it requires businesses to stand up. And I know that. And he knows that. The governor knows that. And Judge Shepard knows that. They all know it requires people to be active, like Goodwood, like us, like Beans, in order to push this forward. In order to push this forward. So why don't more businesses stand up? I'm going to tell you guys why. A lot of you guys sit there and say, why don't these businesses stand up? Everything else. So a couple reasons. First, look at why we are so successful standing up. It isn't just we stood up and did it, but also at the same time, they just happened to find, when the health department walked into Brood and tried to close us, they just got the wrong guy at the wrong point of his life, who was tired of being pushed around and told what to do by the government all the time about everything that I'm working so hard for that I know they don't actually have the ability to do, or shouldn't at least. In America, I thought I was building my business in. They shouldn't. But at the same time, they caught me at the wrong point in my life where I had been studying and well-versed in these things. They caught the wrong guy, basically. Who's aware of aware of the philosophies, aware of the liberty philosophies, aware of how to talk about them, how to debate them, aware of the original ideas. At first, people called me a grifter quite a bit, and then people started to realize, no, he actually knows a lot of the basic stuff about liberty that you should know if you really believe in it. And most restaurant owners aren't that way, and that's not their fault, right? A lot of us have checked out of politics well before this, and then they came around, politics came for you, and that clocked a lot of people back in. And that stops these restaurant owners and these other business owners from feeling safe to stand up. And it's for a very simple reason. Look what happened with Goodwood. They stood up and they brought a lawsuit. And I heard local podcasts here. I listened to the lefty and the righty podcasts and all kinds of, there's not really a good truly right podcast in Kentucky. If you find one, let me know. I find ones that call themselves conservative, but really are some of the biggest rhinos I've ever heard in the world that believe that government is a good thing that solves problems, not just a necessary evil that is needed. And that left unchecked leads to tyranny. But I listen to the left has a lot of podcasts in Kentucky, and I listen to them. Don't worry, guys, I'm very balanced on where I get my information from. So I'm listening to them, and they're talking about the Goodwood. And the fact that Goodwood even brought a lawsuit. Keep in mind, they didn't do what we did. They didn't stay open. They didn't just say, nope, forget you, I'm not following the mandates. They literally just brought a lawsuit after a law was legally passed saying, hey, I should get to follow that law. And these lefty podcasts were saying, we're never buying their beer again. These businesses are afraid to stand up because they don't know where you fall. And you can't blame them. They're afraid to stand up because they think if they do, they'll be out of business. They think requiring or playing along this vaccine thing is the thing they're supposed to do because because if you're not paying attention, who do you listen to or catch snippets from? Mainstream media. That's it. You're not really listening elsewhere. And the few snippets you catch tell you that this is what you should be doing. And that's the problem. The other day on a site that was talking about, on a page that talks about masking and things like that, I said, there was one specific place, I'm not going to call them out per se, that I loved to go to pre-pandemic. And for the first time ever, I went in there and I wasn't wearing a mask. And they literally said, I can't serve you unless you're wearing a mask. And I said, I just don't have one. And of course they didn't have any. And so they literally just didn't serve me. And I said, man, that sucks, That sucks. Then I said, how do you change that person's mind? Right now, they think they're doing the right thing because the echo chamber that has been built around them by mainstream media and by the governor and by everyone else says that's the right thing. What if we build an echo chamber around people? What if we have a business that says, after the mask mandate's lifted, so they're not risking anything, that says, we still want you to wear masks? What if we make it clear to them that they know they're losing business by doing that? Because they think they're going to lose. Listen, they're not doing this because they're just sheep or whatever. They don't care about those things. They don't. They barely pay attention. They're doing it because the echo chamber built around them says, this is what you do if you don't want to lose business. They think it's the best way to keep business. And until we paint a different picture for them, they're going to keep doing that. And the problem is the people on our side of things, often because we are the type who want to be left alone, guess what? We leave people alone. If somebody doesn't serve you because you don't have a mask, you just don't go back. You don't ever tell them why. You don't ever do anything to make it obvious to them. You just don't go back. And then you expect them to know why you never went back. Because we're those types of people. We want to be left alone. And we kind of have to stand up here a little bit. We have to. We've got to start saying, no, we need to fight in this culture war. We need to fight in this information war going on. And we need to fight in it in a way that also isn't violent. And give you an example. We posted about the petition going on with Judge Shepard. I encourage you to share that. Send that around. It's a petition to ask the Judicial Discipline Committee to discipline Judge Shepard, right? And we explained really why in a good way in a post today, but essentially, we want to encourage somebody to run against Judge Shepard, and getting at least even a hearing done can do that. And yeah, I mean, if the hearing goes terribly, yeah, he could be taken and removed as a judge, but that's not a likely outcome. But if we just get a hearing, maybe that might encourage a lawyer, because it has to be a lawyer that's been practicing law 8 years, that lives in the area, to run against him, or encourage Judge Shepard to retire, because it's an 8-year term, and he's coming up on 16 years, so he's had 2 terms. And I see people commenting on there and being like, oh, tyrants only care about their lives and calling for violence. Just stop. Just stop. Unless you're going to go, what are you saying, huh? You saying what? You're picking up your rifle and going on up to the Capitol and going to do something? No, you're not. You're not. Sit down and be quiet. That's not helpful. It's causing trouble. Especially when the founding fathers have left us nonviolent means to get this done. Nonviolent means for change. And we haven't even used any of them. And yet we have people out there thinking that's the best option we have. How hypocritical of you to say that when you don't even show up to primaries half the time. These people saying that, carrying around $4,000 kits with $2,000 rifles, have never even maxed out to a candidate, that's $2,000 here in state Kentucky, have never even maxed out to a candidate that they believe stand for what they believe in. And yet they think that's the best option. I was making a comment about this today. It's like plugging in the vacuum cleaner and it doesn't get turned on and saying, well, we just need to go ahead and burn down the whole house. Okay, well, maybe we just replace the vacuum. Replace the vacuum, plug it in, still doesn't work. Yeah, well, vacuum don't work, burn down the whole house. Okay, well, maybe we need to flip the breaker. Let's go flip the breaker. Flip the breaker. Doesn't work. Oh, burn down the whole house. Buddy, we have not even gotten to this point yet. And just because you don't understand how electricity works doesn't mean the answer when the plug doesn't work is to burn down the whole house. And I've got a problem with that. I just have a big problem when people sit there and they believe that's it. You're not being helpful. You're not helping anyone. Nothing, that's not going to happen. And not only that's morally wrong and incorrect because we have not exhausted all of our non-violent ways of handling this. I mean, we're not even seeing mass civil disobedience. Come on, guys. Come on. I'm sounding like Joe Biden. Come on, man. I hate it when I see those comments. They're so stupid and reductive. They don't get anything done. Yes, I get it. You fill out petitions and you feel like they don't work, or you make your voice heard and you feel like they don't work, or, we had the Tea Party that one time that got in a lot of people, and then, it didn't work and people squished. And, in fact, we have an event going on April 17th at Brood. We only have like 10 tickets left, though. It's pretty much sold out. Sorry about that. But where we're specifically talking about how do people get elected at the state level? Because you don't realize, of course, how important these people are. How do you hold them accountable? How do we support them so they don't squish? What happens to a legislator once they get elected? How do you find candidates, right? How do we keep them loyal to what they say they believe in, their principles? And we're talking about this, and not only are we talking about it, but we've seen success. You cannot sit there and tell me that Savannah Maddox has seriously squished at all since she's been in office. You can't tell me that about Felicia. You can't tell me that about Senator Southworth. You can't tell me that about, I know of a certain Representative Baker, Shane Baker. We don't agree on everything exactly, but he's got a good, solid stand for liberty. And he hasn't squished. He hasn't squished. And that's my point. We have victories. We need to just get more, and we're going to show you guys how to do it. How do we hold them accountable? How do we be part of the solution, not a part of the problem? I know I feel guilty. I haven't showed up to every single primary and tried to make sure every single candidate was fielded, because going back to Judge Shepard, in 2006 is when he won his first term. He then 8 years later in 2014 ran again. You know how much money he raised in 2014? $0. You know why he raised $0 in 2014? Because he was unopposed. Unopposed. It's important. That's what I mean by that's not the call. You can't sit there and say that all is lost when the judge who's sitting in there making these decisions that is pushing this tyranny on us wasn't even opposed last time he ran for election. I don't know. Just a small perspective for you guys there. As a reminder, guys, I didn't say this at the beginning, please hit the share button. If you're watching right now, scroll on down, hit that share button for me. Let everybody know I'm on and out there. Just, I don't know, because I asked you to. I don't know why you'd do it. But please do it. So in all of this, though, who do I ultimately blame, right? In a way, I said this the other day. If you're walking a dog and the person's holding a leash and they let go, and you hired a person to hold a leash, right? So if you hire a dog walker to walk your dog, and let's just say for this case, let's say Andy Beshear and like Judge Shepard are like the dog, okay? And the legislators, because the legislative branch is in Kentucky more powerful than the executive and judicial branches. Because remember, they can impeach anybody they want off the other two branches. They also have the power of the purse strings. So let's say you've hired the legislators to go walk the dog and keep it under control. That is Andy and Judge Shepard. And let's say the dog walker lets go of the leash and the dog goes and bites somebody. Ah. Whose fault is it? Is it the dog or the dog walker? I mean, the dog is doing what dogs do. They're biting people. You probably hired them and put them on a leash because you know that dog, if you let him go, is going to misbehave. It's going to be running people's yards and tearing up things, having no respect for personal privacy or property, pooping everywhere on everything, trying to mark their territory, right? That's why you hired a dog walker. Keep them under control. So the dog walker failed. And I got to say, I blame more so the dog walker, especially when they saw this coming. Very early on in the legislative session, the Kentucky legislators passed SB1, SB2, and HB1. And the judge injunctified it. And very early on, they also had the opportunity to impeach Beshear. And they didn't. Knowing that it's not like they could claim, well, we didn't know he was going to tie us up in courts or we would have impeached him. No, he was doing it before you even had been finished with the impeachment investigation. You didn't even politically use that to get him under control. You didn't even be like, you know what? You want to injunctify us in court? Okay, we're going to subpoena you to testify in front of us. You could have at least done that, but you didn't. And when he threatened to throw you in jail and hold you in contempt for passing a budget, And Judge Shepard went on the record saying he's willing to do it when he said he's willing to take away your legislative immunity. You could have, because he thinks there's a pandemic exemption, you could have impeached Judge Shepard too. And you didn't. We elected you to protect Kentuckians, and you didn't. You did pass laws. You did like half the job. But at the end of the day, the dog's out there crapping all over people's yards and biting people and peeing on things. And you, the dog walker, have done gone home. Your job's over. The legislative session's over. And you knew the dog would do this the minute you left. And now us citizens are left through our court cases like in Scott County, like we have in Boone County, like Cooperrider v. Bashir, to protect the civil rights we can of these people of Kentucky, while you're out there lounging around trying to pat yourselves on the back for the job you did. Meanwhile, it takes people like me to get it done and across the finish line because you failed to do it. That's why everything the governor and Judge Shepard are doing, I blame on the Kentucky legislators. They failed to act. They did the same old, same old. I wish for 1 second they realized what was really going on. That's why people have stopped giving to the Republican Party directly. And I encourage you not to. Save your money and give it to good candidates. Give it to the good candidates you want to help. Don't give it to the party. I mean, ask yourself, you're going to hire that dog walker again? With this dog out here doing all this? Messing around? Of course not. Of course not. In other news, national news, Johnson & Johnson having some issues out there. I'm seeing COVID vaccination sites all over the country getting shut down, closing up because Johnson & Johnson vaccine having an allergic reaction. This is after Johnson & Johnson had a mix-up with some things that were in their vaccine and had to close that down too. Somehow, some way, we've managed. I don't know. It's crazy. A vaccine made in a year has problems. Who knew that would happen? Who knew that would happen? I didn't know. I mean, I thought these things were safe and well tested and FDA approved. Oh, wait, hold on. They're not. They're approved for use on the emergency use authorization. That's right. They're not actually selling me. But hey, that hasn't stopped us from giving it to 16 plus. And at the same time, you have vaccination sites closing. You got the Moderna vaccine in UK being advised not to give to people because it's causing blood clots in the brain of all things. And now they're also investigating a Wall Street Journal breaking news. The EU is investigating reports that Johnson & Johnson COVID-19 vaccine could cause blood clots in rare cases, just like the Moderna or the Moderna vaccine. But hey, let's go ahead and open that up to 16 plus. Because, you know, while we have vaccine sites closing and possible blood clotting, let's give it to that age group that nobody dies from COVID in. Like statistically zero. Like in the state of Kentucky, 20 and under, according to the CDC, they don't count probable, is zero. Zero Kentuckians under 20 have died from COVID. According to the CDC, the state numbers have 2, they count probable. Regardless if it's 0 or 2. And the 2, I can tell you the 2 are, 1 was an unfortunate child, I believe about 7, 8 years old, been dealing with a lot of cancer issues and other medical issues, and then a young infant that even Andy Bashir said he thinks is probably just sudden infant death syndrome. So they say, hey, we got these issues going on with this vaccine out of nowhere. Let's go ahead and open it up to 16 plus. While at the same time, J&J is trying to get emergency use authorization from the FDA to put it on kids 12 plus who aren't dying from COVID. And oh, by the way, let's go ahead and let's roll out nonstop fear-mongering stories and propaganda about how COVID is now spreading because of youth sports. Youth sports are the problem. That's right. Those dirty COVID-ridden children out there playing baseball are just destroying the world. It's convenient, isn't it? At the same time, they open it up to 16 plus. And listen, I'm not a conspiracy guy. A lot of you guys who out there know me and send me messages actually can find me frustrating sometimes. because I'm not as much into the conspiracy side of things as you guys are. That's okay. We can agree on what we agree on. So I'm not a big conspiracy guy. And I'm not saying necessarily that there has to be. I'm just saying it's real simple. The government goes to the media and says, hey, maybe you can help us get these kids vaccinated. And they go ahead and respond by being like, okay, sure, yeah, of course, because we don't want to lose our access. I mean, you give us stories that we then sell advertising on, and if we don't do what you ask us to do, we might lose our access. So you want to go ahead and get the kids out there? Let's get the kids. Yep. We'll run nonstop fear-mongering, fear propaganda stories about how kids hitting a baseball is the real problem now. Oh, by the way, let's open up that vaccine to 16 plus. Oh, by the way, let's get J&J, who's having issues with blood clotting and having to close vaccine sites. Let's go ahead and get them approved for 12 plus. Because this can't end badly. I don't know. They felt a need to make sure the vaccine manufacturers couldn't be sued for liability for a reason. I don't know what that could be. Anyways, guys, that's what I have for you today. Thank you for joining me. Thank you for engaging. Please share it out. Share it out there if you enjoy what we're doing. Tomorrow at 4 o'clock, I'll be in Louisville. I post some about that on our Facebooks there and Twitters and the Instagrams. And, somebody asked about the blood clotting. Wall Street Journal. Just Google Wall Street Journal, J&J, COVID-19 could cause blood clots in rare cases. That's the name of the article. Anyways, I'll be up in Louisville, 4 o'clock tomorrow. Join us, please, for the chats there. Ask your questions there. Everything else, I'll be there. Tony Wheatley will be there, and Brother Lee Watts will be there. He's the chaplain up there. I invite you to join us. As well, guys, I thank you. Remember to share it out. Check us out, broodco.com. I thank you guys so much.